Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. My name is Anna Marie and today I'm going to do a video of some books on my TBR that I'm intimidated by. I guess there are some themes to this small selection that I've made. A couple of them are classics, some are non-fiction, some of them are just quite large. This video is like inspired by a video, or like a video sort of series that Sophie from Redhead Reading does, where she goes through some books on her TBR that are intimidating. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to do too. I think I'm going to kind of go in like order of how long I've had these books for, but this isn't definitely accurate, like I might be wrong for sure. But one book I have had for a really long time is Zong by Norbese Philip, which is, and it's a poem, right, like a long poem about the Zong, which was a slave ship, and this sort of like infamous trial that like came out of the fact that basically the captain of the ship ordered that around 150 Africans be murdered by drowning so that the ship's owners could collect insurance monies, and relying on the kind of like legal record or like decision of the trial, the poem is then like sort of made out of that, but as a way to, I don't know, like reanimate or like excavate the people from the text. I think that's sort of the idea. It becomes an anti-narrative lament that stretches the boundaries of the poetic form, haunting the spaces of forgetting and mourning the forgotten. So it sounds like really great, and it sounds also like kind of up my street, but it also sounds like, you know, and it looks like something that kind of requires a lot of attention and work to read, which I'm not against. Obviously I like reading difficult things, but I feel like, you know, you really have to carve out like time and space to do that, and I've never really like felt I have done that yet. So, you know, I really would like to get to this year. In fact, maybe I haven't had it for that long actually, because I think I maybe bought it for my masters. Okay, so whatever, we've already mucked up the order, but that doesn't really matter. It's also one of those things where it's just like once you start, I think you become involved in the text in a way that just sort of makes it make a bit more sense, or it becomes more legible to you as you go into it. But like, because I haven't done that, I feel like a bit yeah, like a bit just separate to it, which makes it maybe more difficult, but I should really just begin. So I think this actually is the thing that's been on my TBR for the longest, and that's No One Belongs Here More Than You, Stories by Miranda July. Yeah, I've had this for a long time, and I think part of it is like I'm not particularly like drawn to short stories. I don't think it's generally that I'm intimidated by short stories, but it is just that like I guess sometimes they can be kind of like hard to get into. But the reason why this is like intimidating is because I'm not sure, yeah, I feel like the subject matter of what Miranda July writes about like vaguely intimidates me, and like how she writes about like human connection and relationships. I mean, I actually loved, like, I think it's one of my favourite films of all time, her like, what was it, like 2020 film I think it was, Kajillionaire. But I feel like the energy of Kajillionaire and her actual like written novels and like fiction is really different. I mean, I might be wrong, but just from how people have spoken about them, so that's also made me, like, I would have thought that having watched Kajillionaire and loved it, I thought that it would make me want to pick this up more, but it actually hasn't. But I do, you know, I want to read it. So there's this. Then we have this, which is The Story of an African Farm by Olo Schreiner. I'm basically just intimidated by this because like I think it's going to be like really intense to read, but I also think I'm going to find it really fascinating. And again, it's like I feel like sometimes you can like preemptively or like have like an impulse towards like a book, but as a result of that impulse it makes you think that like you really need a lot of time and space to carve out for it, which you don't necessarily have, or like it just takes a lot of energy to do that. And it's sort of the same with this, because like I think this is going to be like kind of difficult in terms of sort of like colonization, but also in terms of like the history, the long entangled history of like feminist, like white feminist sort of emancipation or like politics with colonization. And obviously this is also just my assumption, so maybe I'll be completely wrong. But I also think, yeah, I'll just find it really interesting because I know that there's some stuff about like pregnancy, but yeah, it just seems like a lot. And then I don't know, all of these books I really just should read because I want to read them. This one, it's kind of because of the size, it's also because of like the format, and it's also because of the author. So this is The Rebel of the Family by Eliza Lynn Linton, who is a sort of like, right, I mean I'm pretty sure this is right, she's sort of one of those classic examples of like a woman who is like extremely vocal in the public arena but is extremely antagonistic to like feminism or to like women's emancipation, politics, that kind of thing, in a way where people struggle for feminism, like, you know, the fight for like women's voices to be heard, actively benefited her and allowed her to be as vocal as she was, you know. But anyway, so that's why it's sort of interesting. I know there's also some like queer potential stuff with this, and yeah, I mean, it has a great title and it's from the 1880s. It's just that like it is quite long. I think it's like 400 pages and the pages are just so white. Can you be intimidated by white pages? I think I am. It's about like a new woman called Perdita Winstanley, and she's trying to balance her conservative family with her radical friends in the women's rights movement. Now we have a non-fiction book that I was really excited to have like tracked down a copy of, and I was like so ready, and I read Sense and Sensibility last year in preparation to read this, and I still haven't picked this up. I guess it just feels like maybe, you know, I kind of feel like maybe I'm just still not ready for it, but I am ready for it. And like the point is it will teach me stuff. I don't have to know everything going in. That's the point of reading. This is Jane Austen, Women, Politics and the Novel by Claudia L. Johnson. I have had this like on my non-physical TBR for like a really long time. Like, you know, when I used to watch Ron Lett and she made like a whole video about Claudia L. Johnson. So since then I've been like really intrigued as to what this says, but I still have not picked it up. I guess trying to think if there's like other specific things that make me feel intimidated. Jane Austen and 18th century is not my era, like the, you know, the long 18th century as they say. So I think that is kind of maybe part of it as well. But overall I think sometimes I'm just like a scaredy cat about non-fiction, which is something I've talked about quite a lot on this channel. Okay, so then the last two I have, these are both big books, and again one of them I showed more recently too in my beautiful books video, but this is Manya by Anna Gmeiner, and yes, it's just long. That really kind of is it. It's 526 pages, which I guess like isn't that long when you think about it, but it's just still quite long. And I think if it was shorter and it still had the same synopsis, I probably would have already picked it up, so I do feel like it is the length that's putting me off. I think the etiology of this is that it was originally a play. Yeah, and it's translated by Kate Phillips. Is that a good like synopsis that I can like? Because I sort of like researched this before. It was like written in the 1930s. So it's set in Germany between 1920 and 1933, and I think it's just about like a group of children who and their experiences. I think they are Jewish, or like there's probably some kind of connection there, because that's also why I probably put it on my TBR. And I'm pretty sure Anna Gmeiner was Jewish and she moved to London in the 30s to get away from Nazism and Hitler and stuff. Anyway, I think it looks good, and I mean hopefully I will get to it soon. And then the last one is Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, translated by Daisy Rockwell. Again, this is another one that's just like quite big. This one is 735 pages or so, so that is pretty big. I did also pick it up at a time, because I did originally plan to buddy read this with someone, but then it was like when I was beginning my PhD and I just was like, you know, I thought it was very sweet and naive of me to think that I could, you know, I had the capacity and energy to do a buddy read of a 700-page book whilst I was beginning. And I think something I can be intimidated by is like when I think I am gonna like a book. I guess maybe I have already sort of said that in this video, but you know, like when I think I'm gonna like it, I sort of don't want to get to it just in case I'm wrong, I guess, sometimes. Or yeah, I don't know. I really do want to get to this at some point. It's probably something quite good to read like over summer, although I don't actually have a summer holiday really, because I have a deadline in September. But whenever I try to take a summer holiday, even if it's not during the summertime, maybe I'll read this. And now that I have made this TBR, like, I will hopefully sort of get to these maybe sooner than I would have, and then maybe, probably in, you know, a while, I can kind of update you on my progress. Yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. I'll leave a link to Sophie's videos of their intimidating TBR in the description box. And yeah, I hope you're having a nice day when you see this, and I will talk to you when I next talk to you. Bye!